Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I've got another workflow for you where I'm using ElevenLabs, Ableton, and Suno to go from stems to a sample beat to a full-blown song. And by the end of this video, I hope that you have learned something new. So let's get into it. Okay, so first I'm going to kind of go over the four main parts of how we're going to be doing this. The first step in this process is I'm going to be generating sound effects in ElevenLabs to then create MP3 files for putting into Ableton for either using as just one-off stems or actually putting that into a MIDI for us to make something out of. And the reason I want to make an intro is because it's going to lead us into step 3, which will be extending that simple intro in Suno combined with the lyrics that we write and the style description that we write for the full song. And then finally, generally, the process that I use is to then extract the vocals and then take the backing track as separate stems, putting it in Ableton, and then singing over the track myself for a final song. And before I get into the first step in this video, I wanted to sort of take a step back to also talk again a bit about taste. Yes, I understand that using AI definitely does a lot of the heavy lifting, but we can also use this as an opportunity to really start to think more deeply about how taste actually influences the output. And the way that I would describe taste is sort of what I have here in this little diagram, right? So like within the same possibility space, the distinctions and the constraints are what we can call taste. So the constraints that you put around the project for yourself, like the time, the tools that you're using, your limited experience, and the distinctions that you make, which are kind of your own creative decisions and judgments based on your own intuition, and that all comes back from your direct life experience, and then the way that you perceived everything in life and how that influenced the way that you see the world and what your worldview is. And this is going to come out through anything that you create. So that is kind of the backdrop for the video, is have this in the back of your mind as we're going throughout this entire process. And notice how using AI tools helps us speed up the creative process to get a faster feedback loop and let us actually identify what our taste is. Because at the end of the day, I have very little control over what the music is going to sound like or what instruments are going to be used relative to somebody that is a professional producer or a professional musician who has a live band in a studio and is trying to make everything sound exactly the way they want in their head. The tools I'm using are limiting me to generating outputs and having to sort of sift through and decide for myself which one sounds the best to me. So with that, let me first go over ElevenLabs and how we can generate these audio sound effects and use them in Ableton. So as you can see here, ElevenLabs has gone way past just AI voice. And for those of you that aren't familiar with ElevenLabs, it was first known for its AI voice capabilities, but it has since then also released products around producing music and voiceovers, dubbing, and also sound effects. And so I don't like to use the music for this specifically because sound effects are where we're going to get distinct sounds that we can use in Ableton later. And I already have a few examples that I've generated. So if you can see this one, for example, a digital grunge kick, I was thinking of something that is very, like kind of EDM, but kind of like punchy. And so I came up with these four. So you can see like these are kind of just like samples that you might find in Splice, to be honest. And so instead of using Splice, you can just do this and just kind of iterate over and over again until you get the different kinds of sounds that you want. And I made a few others, like let's see which other one, like ethereal synth pads. And so this is also something that I have been looking at, and I did check ElevenLabs docs, and they do say that you can sort of do this is if you specify, again, like the instrument that you want, and then also the key that it's in, that can also influence the way that the output is. So if you don't put that in there, it may generate something in every kind of key, but using this, you can actually sort of guide the outputs to be in the key that you want. And that's not a guarantee that it's going to be that way all the time, but I thought I'd make a note of that. And for those interested in learning more about the prompting, I'll put the link to ElevenLabs' docs in the description of the video, and I will also put a link to a Google Doc that I made that kind of goes over a bunch of other things related to prompting with ElevenLabs Sound Effects. And now with that, let's look at what the next step is going to be. Okay, and so the next step is going to be, essentially, I have loaded up in here some of the audio sound effects that we generated from ElevenLabs, and so you can hear them here. And what you can see here is I don't really have a big, song. I just sort of made a simple intro that we can then use to extend in Suno later. So if I play this, and so I could have made this more intricate, like I could have made cuts from this whole track on the grunge kick loop, and I could have put it into a drum rack. So like taking a slice of that drum kick right here and then exporting it to a separate wave and then putting it in as like one of the drums and then make my own drum pattern or something like that. You could definitely play around with this a little bit, but I just thought for the sake of the video and also for just trying to see how bare bones I could make it, I literally just took the loops that ElevenLabs gave me and lined it up to make it some sort of basic, simple beat. And so now that I have this is sort of like an intro, calling it an intro, calling it the ominous intro. And now what I'm going to do next is show you how to extend this in Suno. So I'm going to export this, and then you will see me in the Suno Create page, and I will show you how we can extend the song. So now I have loaded up my audio track, and if you're curious, you can simply click audio and then upload here, and then you can select the audio that you're trying to extend. So play it again. This is what we have. And now I already have written some lyrics here, but I do want to sort of touch on, in the process of making this video, how I wrote the lyrics. And so coming back to our diagrams, remember I was talking about constraints, and some of the constraints are, yes, like we're using AI tools to make music, so I don't have full granular control over what the outputs are. However, the other thing that we need to think about is how we write lyrics. And for me, this is just more of a creative bias, but I like to start with the chorus, and then I like to build the verses and bridges around the chorus in a way that makes the entire song still sort of like a cohesive theme. So this is what we would call another constraint right here, and that is actually what helps us be more creative, is when there's constraints around the way that you make something, it forces you to think, I guess, in a more creative way. So that is my process if you are interested in knowing that, but I usually start with the chorus and then I build the verses around to make it a cohesive sort of through line or story. Okay, so now we're back to this. If you have watched my previous videos, I've gone into more detail about, adding meta tags to the verses and the chorus tags and stuff like that to be more granular in terms of what you want the output to be. And you've probably also seen me talk about the style descriptions and how we can make those. I will link the other videos in the description as well if you're interested. But essentially we have this whole lyric set right here. And I have a style of like, BPM 124, a description, like a dark atmospheric electronic track with a slow tempo, etc. And the production style. And so for me, when I'm making the description, I always like to just say like what I'm trying to talk about and then a colon. Instead of writing like a long paragraph, I like to do this by breaking out the components that I want to talk about and then just writing a description for each one. I found that helps, at least in my experience, I've found that helps the model generate stuff that is more in line with what I was asking for. So I've also generated a few outputs, but for the sake of the video, I will also generate others. A few other things to note: when you are generating outputs, do not change more than one of these sliders at a time, because then it'll be harder for you to figure out what to actually change to get the similar sort of result that you got So as an example, if I change the weirdness and the audio influence and then I get an output, how do I know what it is that I changed that actually affected that? Was it the weirdness? Was it the audio influence? Was it the combination of doing both at the same time at those specific levels? And that's why I try to say, start by tweaking one element at a time, and then if you feel like you're just trying to explore more and reset in general, then go for it. So I'll generate a few more outputs here, and we'll play through some of these. Okay, so I've generated a few more, and as those are generating, I'm also going to play some of the ones that we just generated, and we will see how it sounds.
We grow up, we get a job, we hate the monotony, draining you till the brain's dead like a lobotomy. Would rather die trying than give up and bottom feed. So I won't stop, I can't let the bitch win inside of me. So I'll get so sick of myself that I'm in disbelief, and then I'll flip the switch and start living honestly. Don't act surprised, this is just a different side of me. This wasn't natural, had to learn how to get sharper teeth. What a life, ain't it great? Fucking right, in my own way. What a life.
So, as you can see, basing it off of what the intro was, we're getting those same sort of elements. And so I feel like this is a really cool way to experiment with ElevenLabs and Suno together, because I think previously, when I was making songs, what I would do is I would sing something, like I would hum a tune as an audio file and then upload it to Suno, or I would make a track from scratch in Ableton. But to be honest, I don't have a Splice subscription anymore, so I don't really have access to a bunch of cool samples, and I am kind of impatient, so I don't want to, spend a bunch of time trying to make some specific sound. And with ElevenLabs, what we've seen is we can actually start to generate these really cool sort of sound effects and use them as stems in our own production through Ableton to then make some sort of bare bones beat, but it still captures the essence of the elements and the vibe sort of that you want going into the song, and then that carries over as you extend the song using Suno. Now, a few disclaimers. I do think you need to be subscribed to ElevenLabs, at least on a paid plan, to be able to use their sound effects for commercial use. I believe that is a thing. I would double check the terms of service though, because they actually may just say you cannot do it at all. So don't take my word for it, read the terms of service, especially in the space of AI and music and copyright still being sort of a, hot issue. I still think that it's really cool that we can experiment with this and sort of see where the world is going, at least in terms of music. And this is sort of where I see it going, as I imagine creative tools helping people make the sounds that they want to use in their instrumentation and in their production, make it faster so they're spending less time trying to actually make the sound. And then they can start to orchestrate and move those pieces around in Ableton if they want to produce it themselves. Or if they're really just trying to get something off the ground quickly, they can still use Ableton to make a bare bones sample and then extend it using Suno. So I think there's all kinds of ways that we can mix and match and just try different things just to see what workflow feels the most fun and engaging for you and get you in the flow for creating. So now let's talk about, again, the final step where we extract the stems, and then after that we can have some final thoughts, and then I'll end the video. And so now let's move on to the final step where we extract the stems and then we sing over the backing track in Ableton for the final product.
Okay, so for the last part of the video, I'm just going to show you quickly how you can extract all the stems from Suno. So when we have something that's selected, we will just hit those three dots and hit Get Stems. And now I always recommend getting all detected stems, because that way you can break out each track and mix it better in Ableton instead of just having the vocals and then all the instrumental be one track. I feel like that reduces the granularity to which you can actually mix the song. And then once you've extracted all the stems, it'll look something like this. And then if we go to Ableton, you will upload each of those separate stems into Ableton. And then the way I do it is I just sing along to the vocals. And if the vocals are a little bit out of my range, or I feel like it's just doing something that I can't really mimic that well, I will just turn the vocals off entirely and just sing over the backing track in a way that is most comfortable to me. And that is essentially the last part of this process. So again, we went over generating sound effects with ElevenLabs, and then we made a simple intro in Ableton. Then we wrote our lyrics and style description, then uploaded that intro as audio reference and extended it in Suno till we got something we liked. Then we extracted all the stems and put it in Ableton for us to be able to sing over the backing track. Now, in this video, I also talked a little bit about taste and how I feel like it's going to be important, especially as we continue to move into a world where AI tools make it more accessible for people to create music. It's kind of like, I forget his name, but the chef from Ratatouille, and him saying, you know, like, anyone can cook. And I feel like the way he's saying that is like, yeah, anyone can cook, anyone can make music. So it's really important to put more intention into the output through your own creative judgment and try to get something out that best matches your own unique perspective. So if you enjoyed this video, leave a comment. If you have questions, leave a comment, subscribe, like, and till next time, much love and peace, y'all.